Most people trying to learn game development fall into tutorial hell. That's where you endlessly follow along without ever creating anything yourself. I've also been there and it kept me stuck for months. But in this video, we're going to break down the science-backed strategies that actually speed up your learning. This is going to be the science-backed methods that are going to help you build your own projects faster and finally escape the endless cycle of passive learning. So if you just understand and apply these concepts that I'm about to tell you in this video, oh man, you're going to learn 10 times faster. So first, all of these strategies are going to build upon the core idea of passive and active learning. So in learning, there are two types. We have passive learning and we have active learning. Passive learning, that's where you're passively watching. You're like not using your own brain, you aren't creating anything. That's where you're basically consuming. Imagine watching a tutorial or listening to the teacher in class, for example, things like that. Whilst active learning, as you probably guessed, that's where you do something active. That's where you take notes, because taking notes, that's something you do. Or you create like a product. So you make a game, you experiment in the game engine, like something that just requires some thinking and some problem solving. That's active learning. And in like creative and logical fields, game development is like a little bit of both. It's a little creative and a little logical. But both in creative and in logical fields, active learning is overwhelmingly more effective. Both for like remembering the things that you're learning, so you're actually remembering it, but actually understanding and applying it practically as well. Because watching a tutorial and actually doing something like solving a problem, experimenting, like making something in a game engine, those are two completely different things in learning. Your brain is going to learn so much more when it's actually doing than when it's watching. Because when you're watching, your brain essentially just skips the problem solving phase. And problem solving, like doing something that's hard, is essential for actually learning something. And you might think, well, when I watch a tutorial, like I am learning something. But there is actually a very important distinction between like understanding something and recognizing something. Because when you understand something, you can use it practically. If I, for example, learn how to make a player movement system and I was able to make it from scratch with no internet, I would understand it. That's what we call understanding, opposed to just recognition. That's where I, for example, get provided a player movement script and I can recognize that, yeah, this is a movement script. That's recognition, that's not understanding. That's what tutorial teaches you. It teaches you recognition, so you recognize, well, yeah, this is going to do this one thing. But when you are left with no internet, like you close down YouTube or ChatGPT, you're not going to remember any of the things that you just consumed, because the only thing you learned was to recognize the things, but not to actually understand the things and use it practically. And you can probably like relate to this, like you probably have a moment that you're thinking of right now where this was very obvious, that you watch a tutorial and you could actually recognize it. Like I'm not saying tutorials doesn't make you like recognize something, but you aren't able to use that thing that you watched practically. Like you wouldn't be able to replicate it if you didn't have any external resources. So that's very good that you understand. But let's go back to the thing I talked about before with problem solving. How do we like go from recognizing something to actually understanding it? Well, that's by solving problems. So what do we have to do? Well, we have to solve problems. Just as simple as that. Solving problems and actually doing something that's like, it has like what we call a desirable difficulty. That's where we want to be. We want something to be like a little hard, like a mild struggle. That's when we actually remember things. Like I think there was a study and I think the number was like you remember things 80% better when you use it practically with something that's like mildly difficult. 80%. That's a ton. So the only path to actually understanding something is to struggle with it, like having a little struggle where it's not like super easy, but it's like a mild struggle. You need to find the sweet spot. That's the only path to actually understanding something in programming and like a lot of other fields in life as well. Like just another example outside of game development, I could probably be like amazing at color theory, like understanding colors and when I'm going to use them, but actually painting whilst using like the perfect colors all the time, that's a completely different thing. I could like recognize and like have a general overview of like when to use the colors when I'm painting, but there is no way I'm going to learn and actually use the perfect colors all the time without actually painting and actually like solving the problem actively, like while actually painting. And the same applies to like so many other things, like cooking. I could like read a cooking book, I could like remember it in and out, could remember the recipes in and out, but there are going to be so many things that I would completely not have learned if I never actually went into the kitchen and practiced myself. So what I wanted to do, just one thing, is that when something is a little bit hard, don't immediately just go on ChatGPT, go on Google, find a solution. Actually try to struggle with it for a bit and try to use your brain, because like 50% of the time you would be surprised you would actually figure it out completely by yourself. Unless you're like complete beginner, that's something else. But chances are you probably could like do something in the game engine, because if you've been in this like tutorial hell, you probably already have a lot of recognition. So with enough time you could probably guess your way through finding the solution. So what I wanted to do is try to limit your resources. Don't go on YouTube immediately. Maybe use only official documentation. Have a timer, for example. So you're going to like try to solve this problem for 30 minutes. Set a timer. If you can't do it within 30 minutes, then sure, you can go watch a tutorial, or preferably you can go look at official documentation, because that's still going to be like the hardest thing. So we can kind of implement active learning into actually like finding the solution and just have one single goal. So what I wanted to do, since you probably have like some understanding of your game engine and programming, what I wanted to do is have one goal. I wanted to set a timer for the experiment, and I wanted to only use documentation, and then just set the rule for yourself. So for example, if I can't solve this problem within 15 minutes, then I can use the documentation. And the goal should just be one mechanic. For example, make a jumping system, make a UI, whatever it might be that you want to learn. And obviously try to make it relevant for like the skills that you want to make. So if you want to make 3D games, make this one goal like something that's 3D specific, like a 3D jumping, for example. And these are things that you could have watched a tutorial about before. So if you watch a tutorial about, let's just have a simple example. For example, if you watched a tutorial about making a movement system, just try to go from memory and make that movement system, or at least one mechanic from that. So you might not make the entire movement system, but at least try to like move the player left and right. And when you have done that, then you can expand upon that. And also, just as a bonus inside of Smartini, I'm currently working on prototype challenges that are like exactly this, where you get one problem and you're going to get a time frame, and I'm going to tell you step by step how you should like struggle with the problem to actually learn the best and most effective way. Because now we know that these solving problem things, that's the best way to learn game development. So that's exactly what Smart Indie is built upon, and that's exactly why I'm making this like small little bonus. We have like 8 other bonuses inside of Smart Indie aside from the course itself, which is awesome. Like, even though Smart Indie is like a one-time fee, I'm always trying to improve Smart Indie to just give you the best value as humanly possible. So if you just want to have the most effective prototype challenges for your specific goal, and you are like a little beginner and you've been stuck in tutorial hell for like a little while, then you can click the first link in the description and you'll have access to that for no extra cost. Okay, so sweet. Now you know that you should experiment with like specific things in your game engine, and that you should like restrict information, and the struggle isn't like a problem. The struggle is how we actually learn. But you could do that for like a few times and you would be confused about how you're going to like continue this. So now I'm going to tell you like specifically how you're going to use the system of like experimenting and making prototypes to actually scale and become a game developer that can actually release games and have like a huge understanding of a lot of things. Like, we can break that down into one thing, and that's spaced repetition. So the things that you're experimenting and prototyping with, don't just do it one time and then think, well, I'm done, I've learned it now, I'm done. Don't just think that. What you're going to do is, like, the next day maybe use one concept from the things that you did before and implement that into the current thing that you're doing. And even like in a month from now, then do the experiment that you're going to do today, so that you are like spacing the things that you're learning out. Because when we're learning, we can't just like do it one time and then we're going to remember it for the rest of our life. Like, this isn't like bicycling where it's like about balance. This is like logical things. Like, for example, when you had history in school, you like probably could do a lot of history, but since you haven't done this thing of spaced repetition, you probably don't remember like more than 20% of the things that you learned in history class. So that's why spaced repetition is extremely important, not for like learning initially, but to actually use the system of active learning to actually scale and become the game developer that actually can release games, not just someone that can like do a few things. What you can do is you can search online for like a spaced repetition chart or like whatever, so you know like how often you should actually repeat the things that you're trying to learn. And the reason why we do all of the things is because that solving problems, it gives us the instant feedback that tutorials can't. For example, if we are watching a tutorial and there is a concept that we don't understand, we can like in our own brain, we can kind of like shove that away, so that the thing that we don't understand, we don't actually learn. But the thing that we're like watching in the tutorial, it might be something that we have like recognized before or like watched before. So the only way to like get instant feedback, which is essential for learning, that's to solve problems. Because if you do something wrong and you don't understand something, you're going to get an error. It's not going to work the way intended. But that's not to say that you should never watch tutorials. That's not my point. My point is that you should maybe spend around, let's say 80% of your time building and around 20% of your time watching. And when you get more advanced, then you can actually decrease that watching time because you have like more knowledge to experiment with and you have like a fair understanding of a lot of things. But at like your specific skill level where you might have watched tutorials for months or years and you can like recognize a lot of things, but you can do a lot of things, I think around 80% building and 20% watching is like the sweet spot. And I'm not saying like you should watch tutorials about how to make a movement system in those like 20% and then like just follow along. That's not the types of tutorials that I want you to watch. When you're watching tutorials, I want you to use it like as a guide or like a concept overview, so that you can get new ideas on how to solve the problems for your own learning. New concepts or like overviews of advanced concepts, things like that, I think you need to watch tutorials for, because you can like come up with new ideas in your own hand if you haven't like heard of it before. So in those aspects, I think tutorials are like the only thing you could realistically use. I use that a lot if I, for example, want to improve my architecture, like planning, changeability, expandability in my code, just to get to that next level. For example, I'm not going to watch a tutorial on like, oh, make this one thing specifically, and then I'm like following along on my screen, like doing this all the time. That's not what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to watch a video. I'm going to have some notes on pen and paper, preferably. And then I'm going to watch a video. I'm going to take notes of the important things. And it's going to be like thought-provoking, and I'm going to apply those like architecture concepts when I'm actually solving my own problems. I'm not going to use it like step by step. Do this, click this one button, write this, copy and paste the code in the description, guys. That's not what I'm going to use tutorials for. That's basically just brain rot. That's just a complete waste of time. Just as a last note, I think I'm going to tell you is that feedback from others, that's like one of the best things that you can get to actually like skyrocket your learning and your progress. When you're making experiments, you're making prototypes, maybe small games or like experiences that you can actually play, post it online, get feedback from others, or even like copy and paste the code into ChatGPT, tell it to like review your code, like if you have any bad habits, let it tell you that. Get feedback from others. That's going to be like one of the best things for actually learning and improving at the 10x pace that I promised you at the start of the video. But I think the best thing that you could do is like have a community of like-minded people, especially at like your skill level and has been in the same position as you, which is going to be tutorial hell. And for that, the best place in the world is going to be SmartIndie. In SmartIndie, you can share your prototypes, your experiments, and your code with other developers, and you can give each other feedback. Even I can come in and I can give you feedback on your code, your experiments, your prototypes, your learning, so that the process just becomes way smoother and you're not going to fall into this trap of tutorial hell. So if you want to have like a community and you want to like get feedback, even give feedback, because giving feedback is also like another awesome thing to learn, then you can join SmartIndie. I promise you that's probably going to be like the fastest and best value thing that you could possibly do if you take game development like a little bit seriously and don't want to be in tutorial hell for years like I was. Also, if you have like anything else to share or like an experience that you want to share with others, then I'd love to read your comments. So just comment down below if you want to. And just thank you for watching.